Hi y'all, this is Rich coming at you with another camera body review. Today we're taking a look at the Nikon D3200. This came out in 2012, so it's quite an old camera. It does boast 24 megapixels. It also takes raw photos, and it also films at 1080 with 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. The only time it does 60 frames per second is at 720. But before I get into that, I just want to thank God for the ability to take these amazing photos. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to take these amazing photos. So usually I have 4 different categories, and I'm taking a look at, all this very structured things about this about lenses usually. But today I'm going to really just talk about a couple of categories or a couple of points instead of going super in depth, because I don't think I should really knock a dead horse or whatever it is. I'm just trying to see if this is a great camera for somebody that's barely starting out. And if you don't have a huge budget for things, whether or not you should get this camera. So my experience with this camera, 24 megapixels, fantastic. I really enjoyed that. It does have good image quality. The JPEGs aren't amazingly stellar, but the raw images can be post-processed into making it really good, usable photos. You absolutely can use this camera for social media. It'll be a perfect camera for social media. It's a perfect camera to start out with. It's great to give to somebody if they're barely getting into, interchangeable lens photography. If they wanted to try a DSLR or APS-C sensor, this is a fantastic camera for that. So I like that fact. The video quality is okay. It's it's not the greatest, but it does still take 1080p. Not that bad. It's 100% usable. I film in 1080 all the time, so that's fine. So for that, I think the affordability, sub 200, comes with a 24 megapixel sensor, is definitely a 10. It is a huge selling point to this camera, and I like that about it. So the next thing I would talk about is how accessible, whether or not you can use this camera picking it up. It does have a magnifier if you are going to focus manually. The autofocus is a little iffy, definitely absolutely terrible with the kit lens that it came with. This is a Nikkor 1855 DX, absolutely atrocious, terrible lens. I cleaned it, I did everything I could. The autofocus sucked. I hated that lens. I threw on a Nikkor 55 macro on there, 3.5, and I actually got really stellar photos with it. So that was awesome. But that's going to be a huge hindrance to anybody that picks it up. I don't know if it's the software, I need firmware update, what I need, but the autofocus sucked. And so I have like 2 other Nikon mount camera lenses, but both of those autofocuses are broken in that. One's a screw mount or screw motor autofocus, so I couldn't even use it on this camera. So you are super limited. At least you're probably going to be shooting manual a lot or doing manual focus a lot, so you really only have the ability to zoom in when you're in live view. So when you're in live view, you can zoom in to kind of help you with that focus. Other than that, there's no indication whether or not you're in focus. There's no overlay in the viewfinder to help you out with focus, so you best hope you're in focus. If not, it kind of sucks. So learning how to focus or hyper focus manually is going to be a huge problem, especially because the screen doesn't rotate. So it is not a very accessible camera for a lot of people. The menus are a little clunky, the dials are a little clunky. There's only one dial, and then you have to push a button in order to adjust ISO or shutter speed or aperture, which sucks if you're not using a manual lens. If you use a manual lens, that makes it a little bit easier. Then you have to use the function button to adjust ISO. So that is disappointing when it comes to it. So it's not super accessible. So when we're talking about whether or not you want to bring this camera in or purchase this camera for your kit, if I was going to spend the $200, $300 to pick up one of these cameras, I would probably save my money and go for a mirrorless camera, either one of the Sony A series APS-Cs or a Fujifilm that is the 16 megapixels, whatever, something a little bit newer. The issue I have is the processing software is not that great, which kind of throws off the color science, which kind of throws off how clear the photos could be. Absolutely is great for social media, no issues, but if you want to print these out or deliver them to people, this is not the camera you want to be shooting with. So if someone's like, hey, I want you to shoot my wedding, or hey, I want you to do pregnancy photo shoot, whatever, or hey, I want you to do graduation pictures, I would not trust this camera it would deliver, but I would not say it would be the best photos out there. Running around doing some street photography, yeah, this is a fun camera to use to kind of give you some strict parameters. But other than that, I wouldn't recommend it for that. So with that being said, another huge hindrance to this camera is the F-mount only being a DSLR. The reason why I mentioned mirrorless is because with a mirrorless camera, you can adapt almost a plethora amount of lenses to this. With this being a DSLR and a Nikon DSLR on top of it, I can't mount any K-mounts. I can't mount any Olympuses or anything like that. It's very specific. It's very hard to find a mount that'll work where I can mount any of those other vintage lenses. So I'm really only left with the F-mount or the Nikon mount to use with this camera. So that eliminates a huge market of affordability for third-party lenses and stuff that I could use with this camera. Not to mention that some of the autofocus ones don't even work on this camera body. So for me, at the end of the day, would I recommend this camera to somebody that's starting out? And my answer would be, if you don't have the money and you find one for a great price, or you just need that backup camera, or you want one that can work for some of your Nikon lenses that you don't have to worry about because you have a more expensive camera, this is perfect for that. Or if you're just getting it for someone that's interested to dabble into photography, you have the ability to buy them a couple manual lenses. This is a great camera just for that. Other than that, if you can afford to bump it up by 100, 200 bucks, there's other affordable camera systems out there that allow you to use so many more lenses. Or there's bridge cameras out there that have fantastic lenses already attached, like the FZ line from Panasonic, that already have the best glass out there, that is highly versatile in almost every situation, that has a super intuitive menu, that has a flip out display that you can use, that has focus peaking, that actually has a good autofocus on it. There's other cameras with way more technology just a couple years after this camera. But if you don't have the money for it, then yeah, I would go for this, because you could probably find it really cheap and negotiate. If you do have the money to save up a little bit more, I would go with a mirrorless or a bridge camera. So for me, yes, if this is all you can get. No, if you can save your time. Other than that, it does take great photos. So go ahead and check them out. You can see what I'm talking about when I say the color science is a little funky or there's a little haziness. But other than that, I had fun shooting with it. So thank you guys. Have a good one. Bye.